Hello. Just going to check the microphone is in the right place. So yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to see so many smiling faces. So yeah, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about a very emotional subject, Helvetica. You can tell by the laughter that I'm hitting the nail on the head there. Yeah, and this is actually quite an interesting story, bit of background about Helvetica, and also the journey of how we took this classic, iconic typeface into the 21st century. And this story begins at the Haas foundry in Switzerland in 1955, so quite a while ago, where Edward Hoffmann and Max Meidinger decided to design a new sans serif typeface family. And this would be something more simple, more neutral, and more clear than anything that had come before, and arguably since. So it's a bit of a model for what came next. And they called this typeface Die neue Haas Grotesk, or the new grotesque from the Haas foundry. And Neue Haas Grotesk was originally designed as metal type, so to be set by hand, letter by letter. And it was later reworked for mechanical typesetting. And then the name was changed to Helvetica. And it was a hit, as we know. So when metal typesetting gave way to photo typesetting, Helvetica was there. And when digital typesetting arrived, Helvetica was, of course, there, going strong. And in the 1980s, when PostScript and desktop publishing arrived, Neue Helvetica was born. Now, it took 26 years for Neue Haas Grotesk to become Neue Helvetica. And we've been using Neue Helvetica for 38 years. 38 years, that's a digital eternity. If you think about how much desktop computing, the internet, and our digital lives have changed in 38 years, it was probably about time for a new version of Helvetica, right? And Helvetica Neue, or Neue Helvetica, I should say, it was a single master design. And what that means we had one design for use at all sizes. And it was really ideal for setting text at like 10 and 12 point, in and around those sizes. But the original metal type had a slightly different design for every size. So it had tighter spacing, tighter proportions, and really fine details and shapes for large sizes, and looser spacing, looser proportions, and much more punchy and robust shapes for setting text at really small sizes. And us typographers call these variations optical sizes. So in 2019, with the release of Helvetica Now, the Monotype studio reintroduced these optical sizes. So Helvetica Now has a display design, it has a text design, and a micro design, all with slight variations suitable for that specific size range. Helvetica Now also reintroduced alternate forms for a handful of characters. It also has an extended character set with a host of useful tools for designers and typographers to play with. And it also has an extended weight range, from thin to extra black. So Helvetica Now was a huge undertaking. And it was about 4 years in the making, and a whole team of type designers and type engineers behind it. But when we'd finished it in 2019, we immediately began work on the next evolution of this famous typeface, Helvetica Now Variable. But variable fonts are new, and not everyone really knows what they are yet. They're pretty fresh. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive and a step back and try to understand what this is first. So a variable font combines all the members of a font family into a single font file. In a traditional font family, every weight and style occupies its own font file. And there can sometimes be dozens of font files in a single font family. So with a variable font and a variable font technology, we can put all those separate styles into one font file. And variable fonts work on three basic concepts. They work on masters, axes, and instances. So first we have master drawings. So drawings for each character at either end of the design space. So drawings for each character in the thinnest part and drawings for each character in the heaviest part. And in a variable font, when making a variable font, these master drawings need to be completely compatible with each other. Now, when we originally designed Helvetica Now, we had a different master setup, a different set of master drawings for each optical size. So you could consider them related and kind of similar families, but quite separate in their conception. So with Helvetica Now, Helvetica Now variable, the first thing we did was to reassess this master setup. So reducing the number of masters and increasing the weight range in the text and micro spaces to make everything more aligned. Now, this makes the design process simpler, and it allows us to make a better, more efficient, more stable typeface at the end. And second, there are axes. And axes are the lines of variation between the masters. So the most popular axes in variable fonts these days is the weight axis. And as I mentioned before, Helvetica Now has a weight axis that goes from thin to extra black. But it also has two other axes. It has a width axis, which goes from condensed to regular width, and it has an optical size axis, which goes from 4-point to 30-point. So quite a big design space. And again, when working on this variable font update, we took the opportunity to revisit some details of the design, to iron out some of the kinks, but also make it more compatible and more refined. So what you see here is a rework of the proportions and the spacing of the display and the text design spaces, so that you get a better waterfall to the micro design, but also a more consistent relationship between the different optical sizes. Pretty detailed stuff. We're going in deep now. And we also took the opportunity to look at really specific character details. So what you're seeing on the screen here is an adjustment to descender zones. And what that means is, if you look at the hooks on the two A's, this is an ogonek accent. So typically, this should be higher. Shouldn't go as low as the lowercase g. But with the original design and the display masters, it did. It's a quirk of the design process. It's a really big project. These things get missed sometimes. So we took the opportunity to just fix these alignment zones, fix these details. And another example of that is just really minute details, like the positions of crossbars, the weight of crossbars, the size of ink traps. We made literally thousands of adjustments at this level to make this typeface work. And I'm now going to go through every adjustment one by one. So sit tight, grab a drink. See you in 2 hours. Of course, I'm joking. So this process of trying to align the masters to work across these optical sizes, it throws up many, many challenges. And pretty much at the 11th hour of this project, we hit upon a pretty big stumbling block. So most typefaces that are released and exported today, they're exported at 1,000 UPM. Not all, but most. It's like an industry standard. And this works fine for static typefaces, but when you introduce variable functionality and variable capability at this resolution, things can go quite wrong. This awful. Sorry about the sound effects, they're terrible. But it wouldn't be a good story without some drama, right? So there you go. But unlike any good story, it has a happy ending. So after much panicking, much flapping around, chasing our tails, trying to figure out what went wrong, some of our very, very clever font engineers piped up and explained that it's actually to do with resolution. So as you update any kind of old data to a new, more high-fidelity output, you need to address issues of resolution. So the solution was quite simple, really. We just increased the UPM, or the units per m squared, in the source file to 4,000 UPM. So that's like taking a video file and switching it from 240p to 1080p. And it worked a dream. So this made the transition between the optical sizes much smoother, and we got better quality outlines. So all of this was to make Helvetica Now variables 18 master weights, 18 master styles, more efficient and more consistent, and to basically make them visually better. Also, that the third essential part of our variable font would work, and that is the instances. So instances are the blends between the masters. So they're just the predefined styles that pop up in the font menu when you access a variable font. And Helvetica Now has 72 built-in default instances. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. And by allowing designers to mix the masters themselves, there are literally millions of possibilities with Helvetica Now Variable, which is cool, but it's kind of actually terrifying also, right? What are you going to do with all this stuff? That's up to you. Good night. No. But yeah, it can be overwhelming and it can seem complicated, but variable fonts are actually quite easy to use. So in standard design programs like InDesign or Illustrator, you use them like you would use any font. So access them through the font menu, select the style you want, and then if you want to make adjustments to kind of width or micro adjustments, you can use then the variable capabilities to adjust width or weight or whatever. So yeah, not so scary after all. And in CSS and HTML, you can easily access variable settings with just a few lines of code. And with a few more, you can create lightweight, fluid type animations like this. So what will you guys do with all this newfound capability? Does it really matter? And does it make typefaces better? Well, imagine a responsive digital experience where the weight, the width, or the optical size of the typeface automatically adjusts to the screen ratio, or to the window size, or to dark mode settings, or even time of day. All this is actually possible now with variable font technology. And I think variable fonts are a leap forward, a massive leap forward. I think we're seeing the dawn of a new phase of typography where type is coming to life and breathing in a different way. And Helvetica now has the ability to kind of blend between all these optical sizes I talked about, weights from hairline to black, and from condensed to quite normal with masters. And what it is it's a kind of a reworking of a classic typeface for this kind of dynamic, digital, responsive age that we're in. And of course, Helvetica Now is the work of many people over many years, so I'm here talking about this as if I am some sort of genius. I am, of course, not. But we have a team of very dedicated, very passionate people who worked on this project over 6 years. And I just want to call out a few. So first of all, Charles Nix. Charles Nix is the creative type director who kind of provided the vision and the direction for this project from start to finish. I also want to mention one of our designers, Friedrich Althausen. So Friedrich is a very talented, systematic designer. So he basically took this Helvetica Now and figured out how to make it variable, how to make it work, how to make it compatible. So big kudos to Friedrich. And then finally, I want to mention Inke Strottmann. And Inke Strottmann is one of our most experienced font engineers. She's so dedicated to this project and to this idea that she worked on some parts of it from her hospital bed. So she's really quite dedicated. But big thank you to everyone, because it's a huge undertaking. And Helvetica Now Variable was all about bringing this iconic design, which is much loved and much hated, used everywhere, into the 21st century. It's a huge responsibility, huge amount of work. But in doing so, hopefully, we've improved it and we've made it available to the next generation of designers who will take it and hopefully bring it to new places. So I just want to finish now by talking a little bit about how this project influenced me and sparked a different project. So when we finished this project and my involvement in it, I started to think about, well, how, Helvetica Now is by taking an existing design and making this classic thing work and maintaining its identity. But how would designing a variable font from scratch, thinking about variable first functionality as a starting point, influence design decisions? So over the last 2 years, I've been working on a project at home during lockdowns, wearing no shoes, wearing socks, which has resulted in my very soft feet, which I now have blisters on from wearing shoes. And during that time, I kind of did some experiments and developed this new typeface family. And these are some examples of teasers we've been dropping out over the last couple of weeks, which show this typeface spliced with some videos and images that I've been taking while working on this typeface during lockdowns and the various places that I visited, actually in Croydon, believe it or not. So yeah, apart from the gays one, that was taken somewhere else. But what I want to show you guys now is basically the full typeface. I'm going to give you a preview of the launch of this new typeface. It's very exciting for me. I also want to call out two of my colleagues who are here, and I'm going to embarrass them. So Ibs and Marie, who without them, this wouldn't have happened. But yeah, it's just an interesting kind of point to finish on is that variable fonts are this new thing. They're going to influence how we revive new typefaces, but also how we make typefaces going forward. So thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.